Welcome to DeRosa Insiders Live. I am not Matt Perkaloff. I'm Justin Fraser. Very excited to fill in for Matt today. Today we are covering all things property management. It is a property management takeover today. I have the DeRosa Living crew here with me. We are going to get into all things property management. I cannot wait. With that, I want to bring in, first off, Miss Tara Smiley. Tara, come on in. Tara, how are you? Welcome to the party.
Hey, how are you guys?
Great to have you here. I'm going to, without any further ado, bring up Amy. And Amy, come on up and join us. Hey, Amy.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Welcome to the party. How you doing today?
I'm good.
We're so happy to have you today. Guys, this is Amy's first time joining us on DeRosa Insiders. One of your expertises is finding the right people for our properties and our portfolio as well. And so I know that you have been on really a hiring spree for us here. We've had, the name of the game in property management is like, it's a revolving door, right? We have people coming and going. That's, unfortunate, but that's just the nature of property management, right? Especially a portfolio of our size. It feels like we'll always be hiring. In an ideal world, right? We find the best people and they stay with us forever. But the reality is that's just not going to happen. There's always going to be somebody coming, somebody going. And so there's always a need. And so while you are not HR necessarily, you are someone who's really identified, a skill to find people. So talk to us about that process a little bit. How do you, go about, what's the approach to identifying, like, what do we have and what do we need? And how do you match those things up?
Well, I think like the most important thing is to know the team that you're hiring for. Each property is unique. Each group of people is unique. The dynamic is unique. And ultimately, I liked how you talked about how it's something to where you don't burn a bridge because everybody knows each other. And as a word, each property is its own little island that needs to support each other in order to achieve their goals. And without that support and without supporting each other, they just ultimately aren't going to be successful. So you've got to find that right fit, the right people that work well together, that are going to be able to work hard, help them when times are difficult, and to champion each other when they achieve their goals. And so that really is the first part, is getting to know the team that's at that site before you start actively looking for the next person to fill a spot.
So what does that mean? Like, aren't all properties the same? Like, what if I need a new assistant at a property? Like, what's the difference from one property to another? What would be the difference?
Each property has its own strengths. Each property has its own challenges. In some locations, it could be there's a lot of renovations going on. There's a lot of maintenance work going on. Other locations, they may have a problem with collections or making sure that they're getting all of their income. That each location, it's almost exciting, which sounds terrible, but it's almost exciting in how different it is, that you always have an opportunity to learn or experience something new as you go from site to site to site.
Well, and the other key factor too is that aside from the fact that there may be differences in the physical makeup or projects that a property is in going on or going through, the other key difference, Justin, is the resident demographic. Absolutely. Will dictate a lot of what is needed by the staff. So there are some very functional items like language barriers that, you are searching for somebody that has that bilingual skill to be able to not only work with their team, but to be successful working with the resident base too.
Or even just generational differences. As we go through a lot of your primary resident base tends to be of an older age, they're going to want more one-on-one interaction. They're going to want more people that have the people forward skills. Whereas for a lot of the younger generations, they are strictly hands-off, everything via text, via internet, via email. They don't check their voicemails. You want somebody that's technologically savvy enough to be able to communicate on their level and handle leasing on that level versus the one-on-one level.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. So you're trying to understand the business needs of the property, maybe the business plan. So you're understanding really from the ownership side, the bigger picture, what we're trying to do with this property, and then matching it up to looking at what actually assets we have on the ground, what properties, what staff we have, what needs there are, what projects are in motion, and what's coming up to try to fill any gaps that might exist. That's
Yeah.
You
awesome.
got it.
What about on, let's go smaller, right? Because some of our audience is maybe they're looking at a 5 unit or a 10 unit or something. Obviously they're not going to hire a full-time staff, but maybe they're looking for a third party or something like that. Maybe they're trying to hire a company. Like, what should they be looking for in a company they're trying to hire for their portfolio? Is there a difference in that? Like, how should they be looking at a company to hire?
Realistically, the best way to look is what they're already managing. Are they familiar with and comfortable with what you have to offer? You can get a third party company anywhere that's used to managing, anywhere from 100 to 200 units. And that's a different set of needs than a 5, 10, 15 unit property. And so you need somebody that understands how the marketing works for that, how the hiring looks for that, and what kind of management actually is needed for something of that size.
Right.
You don't necessarily want a one size fits all if it's something that's used to largely only managing large properties, because they will not be able to adapt to your needs.
Yep.
Right. And then what if, let's go the other way, and let's say I don't have any PM experience myself, but I've decided to buy a 10 unit and I want to manage it myself. How do I figure out how to best manage this thing? Like, where should I start? What do I do about that?
You call us.
What? No, I want to do myself, Tara. I want to figure it out myself. What do I do?
Yeah, no. So, and that's the thing. Like, I'm a big fan, truly a big fan for when you have, like, honestly, even a sub 30, maybe sub 40 at max, for owners to self-manage. Okay. I'm a huge fan of that. I think, again, it gives you the ability of control, flexibility, adaptability that we ourselves were seeking in creating our management company, right? Shocker, DeRosa Living does not want to do third-party management. We would rather teach clients how to do it effectively themselves. And so, there are tons of resources out there. And sometimes starting with a local apartment association is, one of the best ways to start. They provide education offerings that are local to that market that you have asset ownership in, right? So, learning fair housing, learning the evictions process for your county or state is going to be a clinch item, right? And then for the rest of it, for the, like, okay, this happened, now what? Or I want to grow my rent. How do I do it legally? Right? I need to renew my residence. How do I do that legally? For that kind of stuff, you call me, then we can teach you.
There you go. I like that. Okay, so then let's go back to what we're doing here at DeRosa Living. Then, so you've talked about sort of matching up staff to the property, but let's take that a little further, because you can get a stack of resumes, and just peeling back the curtain for us, we've had some vacancies at in our portfolio for a while. And we don't hire because we have a vacancy. We sort of wait until we have the right person. So I know this is something that we've been working on even for a while recently, right? And we've had a vacancy at a very key position in our portfolio, and we've been, I know I've been impatient. Like, come on, why don't we have this filled? And I, just trying to hurry up the process. And you guys have been correctly, I'll say, pushing back and saying, the right person will be here soon. But tell me a bit about that. Like, how do we know when it is the right person? How do we get the best feeling? Obviously, we don't always hire the right people, but how do we get the best feeling possible that, hey, we feel great about our newest hire going into a key role in any scenario, right? It doesn't have to be this person in this position, but in any sort of generically in any key role, like, it's worth waiting for the right person. And how do we know or have the best feeling we can that this is the right person that was worth waiting for?
Well, for me, honestly, it's with that stack of resumes, weeding through them and looking for someone that has the experience that it may not exactly mimic what you've got and what you're hiring for, but looks like they have at least enough experience and the ability to adapt. to what you, because each property is a new experience. And then it goes down to the phone interview. The phone interview is a great weed out option when you can get somewhere between 50 to 100 resumes in a week, and you've narrowed that down to 20 resumes. The phone interview is a great way to kind of get an idea of who somebody is. It's not definitely not an only interview, but it's a good way to decide whether you're going to move forward with that particular candidate. And a lot of it is I ask questions like, first, I leave it open ended and I let them just tell me about themselves, because they reveal a lot about who they are in that first 10-minute discussion, to where they talk about what their strengths are, what they're proud of, what they want you to know. And you get a feel for who they are and what their expectations are in there. And that helps you decide where your questions are going to go from there. And then asking them, about things that they have had to deal with in the industry that they've overcome, talking to them about how they communicate with their residents, how they communicate with their maintenance team, how they communicate with their office team, how they work with other people around them, is a great way to get an idea of whether they're going to be a good fit for your team or not, and whether they're going to be able to help drive your property to further success.
What's an example or the type of thing someone might say in a phone interview that gives you confidence in moving them to the next round?
One of them is if they genuinely actually say, I really enjoy the diversity of property management. I like how it's always changing. That's a great sell, because and they have to like say it and mean it. But I mean, because they're the type of people that know that the unexpected happens, and they expect the unexpected, and they have the energy to meet it head on. And so that's a really good one. Another one is when they talk about a challenge that they've had and how proud they are because they figured out the solution and they were able to implement the solution and rise above it. And those are two key factors for me that if they bring that up in conversation, I feel really good about moving on.
Okay, got it. What's something that someone may say that you pretty much instantly say, "Man, this is not going to move any further"?
One is actually, there's a couple. If they mention any way, shape, or form that they don't like change,
Okay.
that's a big one. If they mention anything about how they're uncomfortable with technology, because like it or not, technology is a fundamental part of this industry. And then the other one is when they mention, if there's a lot of going back to talking about, well, I left here because I felt overwhelmed, or I left, or I did this because there was just too much, or anything like that, are usually things to where I go, you might not be the best fit.
So judging by the way you just answered those last two questions, it sounds like what you are looking for in a candidate is someone who understands and through their experience can speak to a true understanding that, the day to day of property management, can be wildly different. That they understand that there's a big picture goal that they have to drive towards, but that today is probably not going to be the same as yesterday. They have to keep up with latest technology and stay diligent on that, and also manage many different balls in the air and all of that, while also not getting overwhelmed and not really wanting to sit down and just sort of throw their hands up and say, I give up. Is that a fair assessment here?
It's an
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, like we're hiring for a culture fit, right?
Okay.
Like we're hiring for a culture fit for the company, we're hiring for a culture fit within that portfolio and for that site-specific team. And for an owner operator who's watching that isn't looking to fill a bucket for a full team, they're just looking to hire one person. Then you're hiring for a culture fit to have that person match you, right? And so if you are fast paced and make quick decisions and you want a lot of creativity and you want that collaborative approach, you're looking for those skills and those factors in that candidate. We can always teach a new team member the operating system or some of the platforms that we utilize and some of the forms and kind of this is what you use in this scenario. But ultimately, what we're looking for is culture fit that has the ability to flex and adapt, the willingness and enthusiasm to work with a team to achieve the assets goals, and who wants to feel a level of ownership in that progress. Because, when we're hiring for a manager, we're hiring for the captain of a multi-million-dollar ship. So we expect both accountability at that level, but also their level of engagement and involvement, because that's going to be crucial to success.
100%. I love that. And, that actually reminds me, Tara, that, when we talk about hiring a third party management company as an ownership group on my side of the house, it's so crucial that we are picking management companies that have a very similar philosophy to what you just said, right? Because normally in a third party relationship, I don't get this level of insight into what this conversation that we're having, right? I don't get a level of insight into how Amy is hiring or who Amy is hiring or anything like that, because it's an arm's length third party. They're hiring who they're hiring, right? But what I do understand, I do get to pick sort of the big picture company. And so what I want you guys to understand is you get to pick the company you hire and the culture that they have, right? And so you want to select a company whose culture represents the ownership level, the top level represents the kind of culture that you want, and then that's going to filter down through that company. Now, we built DeRosa Living with a culture that we wanted that matches us as DeRosa Group, because that is literally our company, right? So it goes hand in hand. And so we have exact match for exactly what we want with the type of people that we want and the type of culture we want for our portfolio. So we're in 100% alignment across the board. But if you do not do that, you've got to find and hire a third-party company that is sort of closely represents what you want as possible, hoping then that team that you've hired is then hiring sort of within those guidelines and boundaries that they've set up within their company culture. So the Amy and that third-party company is then hiring people that fit those guidelines too. I just sort of reminded me of that. So I want to make sure that you are thinking about that if you're hiring a third-party company. Because not every third-party company, and most third-party companies are not going to have you in every hiring decision. That's sort of the point of hiring a third-party company. Unless you're a massive part of their portfolio or something else, sometimes for certain key hires, but most of the time, you're not going to be part of the hiring or interviewing process. Okay, so let's say candidate has checked all of Amy's phone screen boxes, and Amy's like, yes, we want to move forward. What is the next step in our candidate's process here?
The next step is I'm forwarding that resume on to the next hiring manager. A lot of times it's a regional manager or it's the property manager, and providing them with, hey, this is how the interview went. I feel this is a good candidate. Here's the things that they brought up. Here's why I think this works. And here are any cons or any negatives that you might find in it that you may want to work through or get more information on, and sending it on to them and getting their feedback later on.
Okay, so you are sort of even pre-prepping them, like, here's the things I didn't like as well.
Oh yes, just because I've interpreted something some way does not necessarily mean that the next person is going to interpret it that way, and it gives an opportunity for them to build on that.
Build, explore it, dive a little deeper. Say, hey, thinking about asking their question their own way about it to further explore whether that's an issue for them or not. I like that. I like that openness. Okay, so then let's say that person then passes that round. We're good to go, right? Hire them and we set them free, and we're off to the races.
Sure, just set them loose. Right? Good luck.
What do we do next?
So that next component is honestly the next building block in success for that new staff member. So that involves an onboarding process that is actively and thoroughly thought out and planned out, right? That is relative to that person's position, skill set, and property, or just position and portfolio in general. And so that onboarding process, again, depending on the position, could be a 1 or 2 week process where they are meeting with, their next level up supervisor to learn basic skills, to learn the property or portfolio, to learn their team, building in some supervision time and some teaching time as well as training time. And then, in all honesty, intentionally building in some time for them to just kind of mill around and explore it and experience it on their own too, right? And then, from there, it's an evaluation that is an ongoing evaluation, and it's not a got you moment for that staff member. It is really, okay, we've identified in the first 2 weeks and the first month and the first 3 months that here's where this staff member excels and they are beyond brilliant. And here's where we're seeing them struggle, or that they themselves have identified, hey, I'm having a hard time with these components, so that Amy can build out either a specific individualized target training program for them to help them level up, or if Amy is noticing that there are multiple staff members struggling with this, that we can build out a systemic platform to roll out to the entire team of, hey, a couple of you guys have actively identified this as a struggle point. So just in case there are other people that haven't been verbal about it, we're going to roll it out to everybody because this can do nothing but improve our teams. And so it's a constant evaluation and restep program.
Yeah, people are lost in the first 90 days.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is everybody wants to be successful, but not everybody knows how to get there. And when if you hire somebody and you put them in there and you say, here, have it and go for it, you're going to lose that person because they're never going to feel successful. And with them every step of the way, giving them that detailed onboarding where they know what goals they have to meet, and they have an opportunity to have somebody that they can, raise their hand and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, allowing them to feel comfortable enough to be able to raise their hand and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. Hey, I need some help with this, and establishing a communication with that onboarding process and building it out in such a way that they always feel supported. You are going to be far more successful with your property. You're going to be able to meet your goals, and you have a much better success rate of creating an employee that wants to stay and wants to help meet your goals.